Welcome to the Moonshine Moonshot podcast. We're going to be unpacking what the seemingly impossible is and how to make it possible. We're also going to be talking about impact, what is impact, and how we make that happen.
How do we move humanity forward? What's the best way? We're going to be talking about visual stories today, which is really exciting. And how do you get to your moonshot? And what the hell is a moonshot anyway? So, a moonshot is a seemingly impossible goal that you can get to, like putting man on the moon. So we're going to unpack some of the ways that we've found work well, starting with visual storytelling. So what is visual storytelling?
What is visual storytelling? So I'm Sue Collins and this is Mike Hill for anyone who doesn't know us. And we run Moonshine Agency and we specialise in storytelling essentially for impact. So I'll let you start, Mike, with that big question. What is storytelling?
You totally dodged that question. What is visual storytelling? It's pretty obvious, right? It's stories and we use visuals and we wrap it around. And why is it so important to use visuals when you're telling stories? Well, it's because of the way we're consuming content these days. So I love to sit down and read a good book, but it doesn't happen all that often. But geez, do I consume a lot of visual stories in my life, whether it be on my phone and my device, iPad, my computer right throughout the day, through TV, and other media that is basically visual. The visuals are so important to getting your story to cut through. So part of that has to do with how our brains are actually designed to process visuals.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, there's a whole lot of science around this and neuroscientists and all sorts of statistics, like the brain processes visual information 60,000 times faster. 60,000, which is extraordinary. And, 90% of visual communication is retained at a higher rate. I think it's something like 90%. Sorry, I've mucked up that statistic totally, but they're pretty extraordinary differences between the way the brain processes visual communication versus written or just oral.
Yeah, it's, don't say oral, too fast, too many times in a row. You could get in a lot of trouble. But it's about, why do visuals cut through so quickly? And I think part of it is self-evident when you really break it down. You've got these things like, blink theory, that you can, know something about someone or about someone who's communicating to you in a blink of the eye. And I think it really goes back to the way that we've evolved and the types of animals that we actually are, because when you think about it, it takes quite a number of years for children to learn how to speak. And it takes twice that long for most people to be able to get a basic level of, literacy, the ability to read. Yet we're visual from the moment we're born. Like pretty much, babies come out and they're visually engaged with the world. So our brains are fundamentally designed to process visuals as the first port of call.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And I mean, obviously we work in video production, so we're going to champion visual communication always, of course. We are biased. But for exactly those reasons you said, it's actually the way humans are wired. It's just the way we do things. It's the way we connect. And, you don't necessarily have to understand a language to be able to communicate with somebody visually, because drawings, pictures, facial expressions, that there's just so many ways to communicate. It doesn't have to actually be spoken word.
And it's not the only important thing. Written documents are really important for some things, particularly in terms of the academic rigor that can be applied. Often these aren't broadly consumed pieces of communication, but they're really important. And of course, novel writing and creative writing is an amazing art form. Not only that, the kind of way the internet works really does rely on written word as well, in terms of how keywords are processed and SEO and how things appear online through search. So the written word's important, and it's even more valuable when it's tied to a visual story, in my opinion. So if you have a great visual story that's underpinned by a transcript, a written transcript that is optimized for key phrases, suddenly this, you got the best of both. You've got something that can exist as a written document or a written blog online, and you've also got that visual story that cuts through. And there are other benefits to visual stories as well as the immediate cut through, in my opinion.
Yeah. I mean, just thinking about it as humans and storytelling, just zooming right out. I mean, there was that incredible discovery they were talking about on the news a couple of weeks ago where they found what they believed to be the oldest cave painting depicting storytelling, and it was something like 45,000 years old.
And it was sci-fi. How good is that?
So,
a sci-fi story from 40,000 years ago, awesome. So the thing is, we're really imaginative, and the reasons that stories stick is because it's really the way that we've connected with one another since caveman times. It goes right back to those days, in terms of, you want to get someone to remember something, tell it like a story. And we see this, this rich articulation of this through Australia's Aboriginal Indigenous culture. You got this amazing dreaming stories. And that's our experience, but that, I'm sure is reflected through ancient civilizations everywhere.
Yeah, that's right. And so even if you're trying to convey a really factual idea, as soon as you wrap it up in a story, instantly people are far more likely to be interested and actually engage with you on what that story is. So I consume a huge amount of factual literature, and I rarely read anything fiction these days. But the ones that really connect with me, a lot of the ones are biographies. So they might be, for example, they could be a business book, but it's filled with personal stories and experiences to highlight the example or the information that's being shared. And they're the bits in the books that really grab me, and they're the bits that I really get engaged in and that I really want to continue reading the book or listening to the book or whatever it is to know more, because it's that story component where if it was just a textbook, I probably wouldn't connect with it in anywhere near the same way. It'd be a really functional, I need information, therefore I have to consume this.
Yeah. And how long can you smash out a textbook? Like, some people do it, but they're freaks. Most of us can't just tuck into a textbook for longer than, a short period of time, if they even go there at all, because they're so intimidating, because there's no visuals.
Yeah.
I think, we see in our line of business doing, a lot of films in particular around things like health issues. Health is, often this area that, has a lot of messaging like, don't do this, do that. So, don't smoke, don't drink, don't consume too much sugar, do exercise, The thing is, to really bring that to life, you need a story, you need a way to engage and empathize, because people don't love being told what to do in that didactic way. But if you get those messages through a story and a relatable character, they can really stick much better.
Yeah. And I think there's a real art to storytelling, but I also think it's an interesting thing in that you don't have to have any skill or experience at all to be able to tell an amazing story. So it's totally accessible to everybody as well, that you don't have to have, any kind of qualification to be an amazing storyteller. You can be a musician, you can be a scriptwriter, an author, you can be writing a thesis, but use amazing anecdotes and stories to really, get your point across. So
yeah. Humans are amazing storytellers, and everyone's got this gift. But some people freak out. Storytelling sounds like a creative thing, and you go, no, it's just about having a beginning, middle, and end, characters, and some kind of through line. I mean, everyone can stitch that together, and we all do. It's just about what do we tell stories about to one another.
Yeah, that's right. And so how do you, if you're working in an area like we are, in film production or video production or marketing or any kind of communications, that's where storytelling, I think, becomes really critical.
Anything at all that requires the person that you're communicating with to retain, to remember the information, to care about the information that you're delivering. Phew, that's pretty broad. Like if you're trying to communicate to anyone and you need them to remember and care about it, you need to use storytelling. And if you want to make that even doubly powerful, make it a visual story, because that cuts through even better.
Yeah, that's right. So if we were going to tell the folks who are listening to this how to tell a good story, is there kind of a methodology we can give them to kind of, I mean, it needs a beginning, a middle and an end. Is there more to it than that?
There are so many different ways to tell a story, and I think it really comes down to strategic communications planning in terms of answering that question effectively, and that is more nuanced. And we've got another podcast that really addresses this art, of creating a strategy for communication. So no, I don't think there is one formula for telling a great story, but I think it's something that we should all embrace, because we know intuitively it works. It works best in almost all walks of life in terms of how we can connect with people. Stories have been the way we connect with one another forever. So let's keep using that gift that we have. There are plenty of animals that don't have this gift, and I'm really glad that we do.
Yeah, so I guess the big takeaway for our audience today is if you can engage storytelling in your work, whatever line of work that you're in, you're probably going to find that the people you're communicating with are going to be far more likely to A, listen, because they'll be interested, and B, retain the information that you're trying to give them.
Spot on, and add a visual to it.
Yeah.
What's the old saying? An image is worth 1,000 words. I think you said that it's worth 60,000 words, like that's how much better they work. So Find a great image, add your story to it, and you're on the right track.
You're on the right track, absolutely. So I hope you've enjoyed today's podcast. We have got another podcast, as Mike said, that's all about how to actually map out a story and communicate, or what's the strategy behind telling a good communications project. So please go and explore that if you're wanting to know more. And we'd love it if you could leave us a review. And the other thing that would be really helpful for us too is to send in questions. We'd love to know what you want to know more about, so that we can talk specifically to the questions and interests that you have. So please stay in touch.
Look forward to hearing from you.